Welcome back, deep divers. Ready for another fascinating deep dive?
Always. What are we exploring today?
Well, get this. Hope and hunger.
Now, I know what you're thinking lunchtime already.
Nope, not that kind of hunger. We're going deeper into those inborn human needs, the fundamental ones.
The stuff that really makes us tick.
Exactly. And our guide is Dr. Alphonsus Obayawana and his book, The Happiness Formula.
That's a pretty ambitious title. A formula for happiness, huh?
Right. But our listeners today are particularly curious about hope and hunger.
The definitions, the types, what makes them such powerful forces.
Yeah, like what really constitutes hope and what really constitutes hunger. That's the big question.
Well, Dr. Obayawana doesn't shy away from big questions. He tackles them head on.
So let's dive right in. Where does he even begin with these concepts?
He starts by defining hope as this amazing antidote almost to all the uncertainties we face in life.
Like a shield against the unknown.
Yeah, precisely. It's that feeling that things will work out, that in the end, things will be okay.
Okay, so it's not just blind optimism. There's got to be more to it than just wishing and hoping.
Oh, definitely. It's not passive at all. It's not just wishing on a star, It's got this very specific structure.
A structure.
Yeah. He calls it the cognitive, affective, and motor component.
Meaning we think it, we feel it, and then we actually, do something about it.
Exactly. And the perfect example of this that he uses in the book is the story of the Chilean miners.
Oh, yeah. The ones trapped underground for months, right? What a story that was.
Absolutely gripping. And Dr. Obayawana uses their incredible survival to illustrate these very components of hope we're talking about.
So how does it all apply to the miners? I mean, they were in a pretty dire situation.
Well, think about it. They had to think strategically about how to survive down there. They had to feel that hope, believe that rescue was possible, and then they had to actually do something, take action to make it happen.
Like working together, rationing their supplies, keeping their spirits up.
Exactly, all those things. But what's even more fascinating is that he goes even deeper, breaking down the sources of hope into 5 distinct categories.
5? Okay, I'm intrigued. What are they?
So first, there's the hope that comes from ourselves, our own inner resources.
Like our resilience, our willpower, that kind of thing.
Right, that inner strength we all have that helps us keep going even when things get tough.
Then there's the hope we get from our families, right? The support and encouragement we get from those closest to us.
Exactly. Knowing you have people in your corner can make all the difference.
It's like having a safety net of love and support. Okay, what else?
Then there's the hope that stems from economic resources.
Oh, so like having the means to provide for ourselves, having a sense of security and stability.
Precisely. And then there's hope from education.
That's interesting. So like having the knowledge and skills to navigate challenges, find solutions, kind of like the miners using their engineering skills to survive.
Exactly. You're getting it. And finally, there's hope that comes from spiritual belief.
Finding comfort and guidance, a sense of purpose in something bigger than ourselves.
Right. So you see, it's not just about one thing. It's this whole tapestry of different sources that can give us strength and keep us moving forward.
I love that analogy, like a toolbox of hope to draw from when we're facing tough times. Okay, so we've talked about hope. Now, let's shift gears a bit to hunger.
And again, not talking about an empty stomach here.
Right, we're going deeper.
Yeah.
What are these fundamental human hungers that Dr. Obayawana is talking about?
He says we are actually born with 5 inborn hungers. We all have them from the moment we enter this world.
So it's like we come pre-programmed with these needs.
Exactly. And they influence everything, our actions, our desires, our motivations throughout our lives.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. So tell us, what are these 5 hungers?
Well, the first one is the most basic, the hunger for food and comfort.
That one's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we need nourishment to survive and comfort to thrive.
Absolutely. Just think about a newborn baby. Their cries, that's their way of expressing their hunger for food, warmth, a soothing embrace.
But it goes beyond just basic survival, right? Like even as adults, we seek comfort in all sorts of ways.
Oh, absolutely. Like wanting cozy blankets, a warm cup of tea, that sense of security and safety in our environment.
Okay, so what's the next hunger on the list?
It's the hunger for intimacy and trusted companionship.
The need for connection. We humans are social creatures, after all.
Exactly. We crave closeness, belonging, those deep and meaningful bonds with others.
And this evolves as we grow, right? From needing our parents to wanting close friends, partners, maybe even finding a sense of community.
Yes, it's all about feeling seen, understood, loved for who we truly are.
Okay, I'm already starting to see how these hungers really do shape so much of our behavior.
It's quite fascinating, isn't it? You start connecting the dots, and it's like, wow. Now, the third hunger might surprise you. It's the hunger for answers and information.
Wait, a hunger for information? Is that why I can't stop myself from going down those Wikipedia rabbit holes?
It very well could be. It's that innate curiosity we all have, the drive to understand the world around us, figure out the why behind everything.
So it's what makes us explore, ask questions, constantly seek knowledge, even as adults.
Exactly. And it fuels our intellectual pursuits, our passions, that desire to learn and grow throughout our lives.
It's like we're all little detectives at heart, always trying to solve the mysteries of life. Okay, what about hunger number 4?
This one is all about our place in the world, the hunger for inclusion and acknowledgement.
The need to feel like we matter, that we belong.
Exactly. Wanting to be seen, heard, and valued by others, to have our contributions recognized and appreciated.
So it's not just about fitting in, it's about feeling like our unique selves have a place and a purpose.
Right. Feeling like we belong, like we bring something valuable to the table.
Okay, this is really making me think about how these hungers play out in my own life. So what about the 5th and final hunger? What's that all about?
It's the hunger for continuity and certainty.
So like needing stability, predictability, a sense that things will continue in a way that makes sense.
Exactly. We crave order, routine, that belief that things will generally stay somewhat consistent.
It's like in a world that can often feel chaotic and unpredictable, we're trying to create those pockets of safety and grounding.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Seeking stability and predictability is totally natural. It helps us feel safe and secure.
This is all so fascinating. It's like you're giving us this whole new language to understand our motivations and desires.
You know what's even more fascinating? Dr. Obayawana doesn't stop there. He actually connects these concepts of hope and hunger in a way that's, well, pretty mind-blowing.
Okay, now I'm on the edge of my seat. Tell me more.
He introduces this, get this, mathematical equation. He says, happiness equals hope divided by hunger.
Wait, hold on. A mathematical equation for happiness. That sounds a little too, I don't know, clinical somehow.
I know, right? It sounds a bit strange at first, but when you think about it, it's actually quite brilliant.
Okay, I'm listening. Explain it to me like I'm 5.
All right, imagine a seesaw. Okay, hope is on one side, and all those hungers we talked about are on the other.
So the more hope we have, the higher our side of the seesaw goes up.
Exactly. And the stronger those hungers are, the lower our side dips down.
So it's all about finding that balance, where our hope is strong enough to outweigh those negative pulls from the hungers.
You got it. And that's where the real work begins, understanding our own personal happiness equation, what fuels our hope, and how to manage those hungers that can sometimes weigh us down.
This is really making me think. What are the things that truly boost my hope? And what are those nagging hungers that are holding me back from feeling truly content? I have a feeling our listeners are asking themselves the same questions.
That's the perfect question to ponder.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're going to dive even deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive. What's really interesting about this whole happiness equation, this hope divided by hunger thing,
What's that?
it's not about eliminating those hungers altogether.
Because they're a natural part of being human. Right.
Yeah.
We can't just turn them off.
Exactly. It's more about understanding them, finding those healthy ways to satisfy them so they don't end up consuming us.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where our hope is high enough to kind of keep those hungers in check.
Precisely. And this is where Dr. Obayawana's insights into the different types of hope, those become really valuable.
Oh, right. He talked about authentic hope and false hope, if I remember correctly.
You got it. And it's so important to be able to tell the difference between those two.
Because not all hope is created equal, right? Some hope is more, substantial than others.
That's right. Authentic hope, it's got to be grounded in reality.
It's like having a solid foundation, something to really build on.
Exactly. It's about understanding the situation clearly, assessing our resources and abilities, and then being willing to take action.
So it's not just wishful thinking.
Not at all. It's about having a plan, a strategy, and I think this is key, a sense of agency. Believing that WE have the power to actually influence the outcome.
Okay, that reminds me of the Chilean miners. They didn't just sit there and hope for the best. They actively worked towards their own rescue.
That's a perfect example. They assessed the situation, rationed those supplies, kept their spirits up, even used their skills to improve their conditions down there.
That's some serious authentic hope in action.
Yeah.
So then what about false hope? What does that look like?
False hope, it's often based on, I'd say, wishful thinking or denial.
It's like hoping to win the lottery without even buying a ticket.
Exactly. Clinging to this desired outcome, but without acknowledging the obstacles or doing what it takes to actually make it happen.
So it's more about avoiding reality than actually engaging with it.
Right. And while it might feel good in the moment, that temporary comfort or escape, ultimately it just leads to disappointment and sometimes even disillusionment.
Because deep down, we know it's not really grounded in anything real. So how do we cultivate that authentic hope, the kind that actually empowers us?
That's where those 5 sources of hope we talked about earlier come in, remember. Ourselves, our families, economic resources, education, spiritual belief.
Right. It's like having this whole toolkit of hope at our disposal. But how do we actually use those tools effectively?
Well, let's start with ourselves, that inner source of hope, that resilience, that willpower.
That inner strength we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And one way to cultivate that, a really powerful way, is to focus on our strengths, our talents, the things that genuinely bring us joy.
So it's about recognizing and appreciating what we already have, those unique gifts and abilities we each possess.
Precisely. And then it's about putting those gifts into action, pursuing those passions, engaging in things that make us feel alive and fulfilled.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's about actually taking action and creating those positive experiences for ourselves.
Exactly. And when we do that, we start building a sense of self-efficacy. That belief that we're capable of achieving things, overcoming challenges.
It makes sense. The more we experience success, the more confident and hopeful we become.
Right. And then that confidence fuels our motivation to keep moving forward, even when things get tough.
So we're basically creating this positive feedback loop. Action leads to confidence, which then leads to more action, and so on.
Exactly. And that upward spiral, it can be incredibly empowering. Now let's talk about families. That second source of hope we mentioned.
Those close relationships where we find love, support, encouragement.
Exactly. Nurturing those relationships is so important for cultivating hope.
Because just knowing you have people in your corner, man, that can make all the difference, especially when you're facing tough times.
Absolutely. It's about feeling seen, heard, understood by those we love and trust.
And it's not just about receiving support either. It's about giving it too, right?
Yes. When we offer love, kindness, compassion to others, it creates this beautiful sense of connection. It strengthens those bonds.
It's like we're weaving this tapestry of mutual support where everyone benefits.
I love that. And those strong relationships, they really act as a buffer, against all the stresses of life. They boost our resilience, fuel our hope.
You're making me want to call my family right now. Tell them how much I appreciate them.
Sure.
But let's talk about that third source of hope, economic resources.
This is one that often gets misunderstood, I think.
Because people tend to equate hope with, financial wealth.
Exactly. But it's not about being rich. It's about having enough to meet our basic needs and feel a sense of security, stability.
So it's more about financial well-being than, abundance.
Exactly. And that sense of security, it can come from a stable job, from managing our finances responsibly, having a plan for the future.
It's like having that safety net, It allows us to actually focus on other things besides just survival.
Right. When we're not constantly worried about money, it frees up our mental and emotional energy, Then we can pursue our passions, nurture our relationships, cultivate those other sources of hope.
That makes so much sense. Now, what about that fourth source, education?
This one, it's all about knowledge, skills, and the ability to effectively navigate this crazy world we live in.
It's like having that mental toolkit to solve problems, make informed decisions, adapt to all the changes that keep coming our way.
Exactly. And education, it doesn't have to be formal. It can be anything that expands our understanding, sharpens our skills, helps us grow.
So reading books, taking courses, learning new hobbies, even just having those stimulating conversations, those can all count as education.
Absolutely. And the more we learn and grow, the more confident and capable we become, and that naturally boosts those hope levels.
It's like expanding our horizons, opening up all these new possibilities for ourselves.
And that sense of possibility, that's a key ingredient for authentic hope. Now, what about the last one? Spiritual belief.
Okay, this is where things get a bit more, personal.
Yeah, it's deeply personal, and it can take so many different forms.
Because spirituality means different things to different people.
Exactly. For some folks, it's about faith in a higher power. For others, it's about connecting with nature or finding meaning and purpose in their work or their creative pursuits.
But it seems like the common thread is this sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Precisely. And that connection, it can provide comfort, guidance, even that belief that there's a greater plan unfolding, even when things are tough.
It's like having that unshakable faith that things will ultimately work out in the end.
And that kind of faith, that deep inner knowing, it can be an incredibly powerful source of hope, helping us weather all those storms that life throws our way.
This has been so eye-opening. I mean, really exploring all these different sources of hope. But now I'm kind of curious, how do those 5 inborn hungers fit into all this?
Great question. And that brings us right back to that happiness equation.
Happiness equals hope divided by hunger.
You got it. And while cultivating hope is crucial, it's equally important to understand and manage those hungers that can sometimes, drag us down.
Because if those hungers are constantly pulling at us, it can make it harder to stay afloat, even with a lot of hope.
Exactly. Imagine trying to sail a ship with holes in the hull. You can have the strongest sails in the world, but if you don't fix those leaks, you're not going to get very far.
That's such a great analogy. So how do we fix the leaks, so to speak? How do we prevent those hungers from becoming all-consuming?
It starts with recognizing them for what they are. They're natural human needs, just seeking fulfillment.
So it's not about judging ourselves for having these needs.
Not at all. It's about understanding them, accepting them, and finding healthy ways to meet them.
So it's like learning to be a good caretaker of our own, emotional and psychological well-being.
Exactly. And that involves being mindful, paying attention to our thoughts, our actions, the choices we make every day.
This reminds me of something Dr. Obayawana mentioned about a tool for measuring happiness. Do you remember that?
You're talking about the PISA scale.
Yes. Can you remind us what that's all about?
Sure. The PISA scale, it's also sometimes called the Ito questionnaire. It's basically a tool that Dr. Obayawana created to help people figure out their own hope and hunger levels.
So it's like taking your emotional temperature.
Exactly. By answering a bunch of questions, you can gain some insight into your current state of well-being, You can see where you might need to focus on, like, boosting hope or maybe managing some of those hungers a bit better.
That sounds really useful. How does it actually work?
Well, the scale measures different aspects of hope and hunger, things like your sense of purpose, your level of optimism, your social support network, even your financial stability, and your overall satisfaction with life.
And then, based on your answers, it calculates your scores for both hope and hunger.
Precisely. And then, get this, those scores can be used to create your own happiness index map.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What does a happiness index map show?
It basically shows you visually where you stand on that spectrum of hope and hunger.
So you can, see at a glance whether your hope is outweighing the hungers or vice versa.
Exactly. It's a really powerful tool for self-awareness. Helps you pinpoint those areas where you might want to make some adjustments, Tip the scales a little more towards happiness.
I'm definitely going to check it out. Where can our listeners find this PISA scale?
Oh, it's super easy to find. Just search PISA scale or Ito questionnaire online, and it should pop right up.
Awesome. I'll have to give it a try.
Yeah.
But before we all get too carried away with self-assessment, let's circle back to those 5 hungers.
Good idea. We need to really understand how each one shows up in our lives and what we can do to, manage them effectively.
Exactly. So let's start with the first one again, that hunger for food and comfort.
This one's all about feeling safe, secure, nurtured in our environment.
So it's not just about filling our stomachs. It's about creating that sense of emotional comfort and well-being too.
Precisely. And that can involve, creating a cozy and inviting home, doing activities that bring us joy and relaxation, surrounding ourselves with people who make us feel loved and supported.
It's like creating those little pockets of peace and tranquility in the midst of all the chaos of daily life.
Exactly. And when we feel safe and nurtured, it makes it easier to deal with those other hungers that can sometimes feel a bit more overwhelming.
That makes total sense. Now, what about the hunger for intimacy and trusted companionship?
This is all about connection, belonging, that deep human need for love and acceptance.
It's about feeling seen, heard, understood by those we care about.
Exactly. And satisfying this hunger, it involves putting effort into our relationships, making time for those meaningful conversations, really showing up for the people that matter most to us.
So it's about being present, being attentive, making those connections a priority.
Right. And it's important to remember that intimacy isn't just about romantic relationships. It's about friendships, family bonds, even that sense of community.
It's about having that web of support. The people who make us feel connected and loved.
Exactly. And those strong relationships, they can be a powerful antidote to loneliness, isolation, all that anxiety that can pop up from, that hunger for connection.
This is reminding me of some of the stories Dr. Obayuwana shared about people finding purpose and connection through acts of kindness and compassion.
You're talking about redemptive aiming.
Yes.
Uh,
Could you remind us what that's all about?
Of course. Redemptive aiming, it's this idea that we can actually find our calling by, get this, turning a negative experience into a source of purpose and hope.
It's about taking that pain and channeling it into something positive, something that makes a difference in the world.
Exactly. And it often involves connecting with others, offering support, working together to create positive change.
So it's not just about individual healing. It's also about collective healing, creating a better world for everyone.
Precisely. And that sense of shared purpose, working towards a common goal, it can be incredibly fulfilling. It really goes a long way in satisfying that hunger for connection and belonging.
This is so inspiring. It's like we have the power to turn our wounds into sources of strength, to use our stories to make a difference.
And that's the beauty of redemptive aiming. It's about realizing that even the most challenging experiences, they can be opportunities for growth, transformation, even deeper connection.
Okay, I'm sold on this whole redemptive aiming thing. But let's not get too sidetracked. We were talking about those 5 hungers.
Right. We covered food and comfort, intimacy and companionship. So now let's move on to that third one, the hunger for answers and information.
That hunger that fuels our curiosity, our desire to figure out the world.
Exactly. And this hunger, it shows up in all sorts of ways, from those childhood why questions to our never-ending pursuit of knowledge and expertise.
It's what drives us to explore, to learn, to constantly expand our understanding of ourselves and the universe.
Precisely. And to satisfy this hunger, we need to engage our minds. We got to seek out new information, have those thought-provoking conversations that, challenge our perspectives a bit.
So it's not just about passively taking in information. It's about actively grappling with it, questioning it, making it our own.
Exactly. And when we do that, we not only satisfy that hunger for knowledge, we also spark our creativity, broaden our horizons, and create this sense of intellectual fulfillment.
This makes me want to go read a book right now, or maybe listen to another podcast. Speaking of which, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. Maybe it's time for a little break, let our listeners process all this information.
Sounds like a plan. Let everyone digest everything and then come back refreshed and ready to explore those final 2 hungers in the last part of our deep dive. All right, deep divers, welcome back. We're in the home stretch now of our exploration into hope and hunger.
Ready to wrap things up?
You bet. We've still got those final 2 hungers to unpack.
Ah, yes, those last 2 pieces of the puzzle. Let's tackle the hunger for inclusion and acknowledgement.
That need to feel seen, heard, valued. It feels super relevant these days.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in a world of, social media and constant comparison, Everyone's vying for attention and validation.
So how do we even begin to navigate this hunger in a healthy way? I mean, it's easy to get caught up in all that.
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that our worthiness, it doesn't come from external validation.
So not from likes or followers or other people's opinions.
Nope, not at all. True validation, that comes from within.
Like from knowing our own strengths, embracing our unique qualities, and living in a way that's true to ourselves.
Exactly. Finding that inner confidence and self-acceptance. When we have that solid foundation of self-worth, it's easier to navigate the world without needing constant approval.
So it's not about becoming a hermit and ignoring everyone.
No, not at all. It's about finding that balance, engaging with the world authentically, contributing our unique gifts and perspectives, and surrounding ourselves with people who appreciate us for who we truly are.
And setting boundaries when needed, right?
Absolutely. Protecting our emotional well-being is crucial. Sometimes we need to step back from situations or relationships that, drain our energy or make us question our worth.
It's about prioritizing our own mental and emotional health. Making sure we're taking care of ourselves.
Exactly. And remember, true belonging, that comes from connecting with people who value us for who we are, not for what we achieve or how we appear to others.
It's about finding those genuine connections, where we can just be ourselves. No pretense or masks.
Well said. All right, ready for that final hunger?
Right on it.
It's the hunger for continuity and certainty. That need for stability, predictability, and order, especially when the world feels chaotic.
And these days, it feels like chaos is the norm.
You're telling me? Everything's moving so fast, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the constant change.
So how do we even manage this hunger for certainty when so much feels out of control?
It's about finding that balance between structure and flexibility, creating routines and structure, but also being adaptable when things inevitably shift.
So not about trying to control every little detail.
No way. That's just setting ourselves up for disappointment. It's more about creating a framework that gives us some stability, but also allows for spontaneity and those unexpected detours.
Like having a roadmap, but being open to exploring new paths along the way.
Exactly. Things like daily rituals, those can help ground us. Creating order in our homes, our workspaces, even setting realistic goals, those give us a sense of purpose and direction.
But also being willing to adjust our plans when needed. And embracing those curveballs that life throws our way.
You got it. Because let's face it, the only constant is change.
And learning to dance with that change, finding that flow between structure and flexibility, that's the key to managing this hunger.
I like that. Dancing with change, it's about building that inner resilience to weather the storms.
Well, this has been quite a journey, exploring these 5 inborn hungers.
And it's important to remember these hungers, they're not something to be ashamed of or to try to suppress.
They're just part of being human.
Exactly. They're what drive us, what motivate us to connect, to grow, to seek meaning and purpose.
Understanding them, that's what helps us create a life that feels truly fulfilling and aligned with who we are.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into hope and hunger,
what are some key takeaways, some things our listeners can put into practice?
First and foremost, remember, you have the power, okay? The power to cultivate hope, to manage those hungers.
It's not about just hoping for the best. It's about taking an active role in creating the life you want.
Exactly. Nurture those sources of hope, your inner strength, your relationships, your financial well-being, your education, your spiritual connection, whatever that looks like for you.
And find those healthy ways to satisfy the hungers, too, for food and comfort, intimacy and connection, knowledge, inclusion, continuity.
It's a journey, not a destination. Remember that.
There will be ups and downs, twists and turns, moments of doubt and moments of, heck yeah.
But by cultivating that hope, by managing the hungers, by continuously learning and growing,
you can create a life that feels both meaningful, aligned with your true self.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you and all our amazing deep divers out there.
Absolutely. We hope this has sparked some curiosity, maybe even a sense of empowerment.
Remember, this journey of self-discovery and happiness, it's an ongoing adventure.
So keep exploring, keep learning, keep growing.
And most importantly, keep those hope levels high.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into hope and hunger. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those hope flames burning bright.